How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another brioche video. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Brioche is the most versatile dough. And today we're gonna make some super soft burger buns. But that will be pretty simple by itself. What we'll also do is make some Korean fried chicken. And we'll assemble it in a proper Korean chicken burger with all the trimmings. This thing is seriously good. And it's easy to make too. So let's get to it and see what we need. So when it comes to the equipment, we'll need a tray with some non-stick paper for the burger buns, a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush, a pot for frying the chicken, a little pot for the sauce, and something to fish your chicken out of the oil with. And we'll use this slotted metal spoon. Now on to the ingredients. For the Korean fried chicken, use some boneless chicken thighs, some buttermilk, salt, white flour, cornstarch, some vegetable oil for frying. For the sauce, we'll need some chopped garlic, chopped ginger, Shaoxing wine or mirin, some dark soy sauce, bit of vinegar, honey, and brown sugar. But most importantly, we'll need some gochujang, which is a Korean chili paste. It comes in a box like this. This is a very common ingredient in Korean cooking, and it's also used in kimchi. So that's all we need for the chicken. Let's get on with the rest of the stuff. 1 egg yolk mixed with 1 teaspoon of milk for glazing the buns. Some sesame seeds, I've got some black and white here. To go inside the bun, I've got some Chinese cabbage, also known as Napa cabbage. Spring onions, thinly sliced fresh ginger. And I have a little dressing of lime juice, sesame oil, sesame seeds, and a bit of salt. Also to go inside the bun, with some mayonnaise, pickled gherkins, and some kimchi. The kimchi is not totally necessary, because the sauce for the chicken plus the cabbage is basically what kimchi is made from. Except that kimchi is fermented, of course. But still, you can survive without it. So let's start by marinating chicken. In a large bowl, I'm going to combine the salt and the buttermilk. Then add the chicken thighs and coat them all over. And this is how you would make southern fried chicken. And if you're not into all those Asian flavors, you can turn this into a southern fried chicken burger. That's up to you. Now pop this in the fridge for at least 12 hours. We're going to continue on with making the sauce. Now this is the easiest thing in the world. Simply combine all the sauce ingredients in a small pan, give them a quick stir. Now let's bring it over to the stove and cook it for a while. We want to bring it up to a simmer and cook it for around 10 minutes. During this time, all the flavors will get to mingle. The garlic and ginger will get cooked and become nice and mellow. And the sauce will become nice and thick. And that's what we want, because it needs to coat the chicken properly. So 10 minutes of cooking, and this is what your sauce should look like. Nice and thick. The great thing about this recipe is that most of the elements are being done a day ahead of time. So pour your sauce in a bowl, cover it up, pop it in the fridge, or you can continue on with the brioche dough. And for that, we'll need some strong white bread flour, eggs, butter, yeast, salt, sugar, and a little bit of water. Now I always say how important it is to have your ingredients at the right temperature. And it could not be more important when it comes to brioche. This dough will take around 25 minutes of mixing time. So all your ingredients need to be stone cold. As you can see, the eggs are at 4 degrees. The flour, I actually put that in the freezer. That's at 0 or less. Even the butter must be cold. Of course, it will be quite difficult to add cold butter to a dough. So we need to make it pliable. So use a large piece of parchment paper and press the butter out until it's flat with a rolling pin. This will ensure that it's soft, but it's still cold. And I cannot stress this enough. All your ingredients must be cold. There's no way around it. If they're not, you will fail. And so that this butter doesn't warm up, I'm going to flatten it out, put it back on my plate and stick it in the fridge until I need it. And last but not least, I have refrigerated the mixing bowl and I actually kept the dough hook in the freezer all day long. Preparation is key, and now we are ready to make the dough. So in your mixing bowl, add the water, the salt, the yeast, the sugar, follow that with the eggs and the flour. I know normally when we make a dough, I advise mixing all the other ingredients before adding the flour. When you're using a mixer, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to switch it on second speed, which is basically low speed on my mixer, and I'm going to mix the dough for 10 minutes. The initial 10 minutes of mixing are there for building up gluten and strength in the dough before we start adding the butter to it. Now your mixer may be different. You may have different speed settings, a smaller bowl perhaps. But I reckon 10 minutes on low speed in any mixer will be just about right. And it has been around 10 minutes. I'm going to switch it off, and as you can see, I pull on the dough. It's resisting nicely, it's nice and strong. Now we can switch it back on, still on the same speed, and start adding the butter in chunks. Just throw it in as the dough is mixing. The dough will need to mix for around 5 minutes after the addition of butter. And if you have a wide mixing bowl like I do, and your mixer is struggling to pick up the dough, simply stop it, lower the bowl, and using your scraper, scrape down the sides. Now this mixing bowl is on the large side. You may not have to do this. Once you scraped it all up, switch it back on, still on the same speed. We are still on the second mixing phase, which is 5 minutes. And this is basically there to incorporate the butter into the dough. Because once the butter disappears around 5 minutes later, we can switch the mixer on a higher speed. It's number 4 on my mixer, which is about medium. And from here on in, we need to mix for 10 more minutes. And once again, if the dough is sticking to the sides, stop the mixer and scrape it together. Now this final mixing stage on the higher speed is there to really work the dough and get the gluten going. But we're not going to mix the whole 10 minutes on high speed, because that would be too much. You only want to keep mixing it on this higher speed until the dough starts collecting in the middle and stops sticking to the bowl, to the sides and to the bottom. Which in my case was around 7 minutes in. So for the final 3 minutes, I'm turning the speed back down to number 2. And as you can see, the dough is right on the hook. It's not sticking to the bowl anymore. Now if your mixing bowl is smaller, this may take less time for you. But here it took 25 minutes in total. 10 minutes initial mix, 5 minutes when adding the butter, and 10 minutes final mixing. And this is looking pretty good. Now this dough is a little bit sticky, so you want to handle it with wet hands. And shape it into a nice ball before you place it in your bowl. What I like to do is fold the sides under and into the middle. But don't make it too tight, you don't want to tear the surface. Now let's take the temperature of this dough. 25 to 26 degrees Celsius, just about right for this. Now we can cover it up and pop it in the fridge for 1 hour. And after an hour of chilling, we need to give it a fold. Now there's 2 main reasons why we're folding this dough. First of all, we want to chill the dough down evenly. And naturally the outside will cool down first before the middle does. So by folding, we'll distribute that temperature evenly throughout the dough. Secondly, this dough is quite stretchy, so we want to build up some tension in it. And the folds will do just that. Now all you want to do is stretch the dough out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle, till you have a nice tight ball. Then you can flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and back in the bowl it goes. And we'll need to chill it down for 1 more hour. And feel free to use a little bit of flour if you feel it's sticking, but do not use too much. It's always easier to add than to take off. Now back in the fridge it goes for 1 more hour. And after the second hour of chilling, we can divide the dough. The reason for dividing this dough is that for this project, we'll only be using half of it. So all the other ingredients that are written down below are enough for half of this dough. The reason for making a big piece of dough like this is that, for instance, my mixer has a very large bowl and it would not be able to mix a small piece of dough. But of course I just could make double the amount of whatever we're making. The thing is that brioche is the most versatile dough of all. And there are so many things you can make out of it. So I'm going to use half for this project and half for another. And if you check out my brioche playlist, you'll find plenty of ideas there. So unless you have a small mixer, then I would suggest doing the same thing that I did here. Make the whole recipe, then divide it in half, use 1 for this project and 1 for the other. So after dividing it, shape it into balls, use the same method that we used earlier for folding the dough. Now we can wrap it up in cling film. Don't wrap it too tight because the dough will expand. The main thing here is to cover the dough so it doesn't dry out in the fridge. And now it's ready for a long cold proof. And you can leave it in the fridge for up to 24 hours. So I'll put these babies to sleep and I'll see you tomorrow. So it's the following day and this dough has been refrigerated for around 12 hours, along with the chicken and the sauce that we made. And it has clearly risen, so you know it's ready. And you could make anything out of this now, but we're going to continue on with the burger buns. So we want to divide this dough into 5 equal pieces. And use your scales to get consistent results. After dividing, you want to pre-shape. Take a piece of dough, flatten it out, Then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Then flip the dough smooth side up, tighten it against the table, and lastly you can pick it up and pinch the seam together at the bottom. You get a nice round ball. The pre-shaping step is there to get everything nice and uniform, as after dividing the dough, each piece may consist of many smaller pieces. So to make everything nice and neat, we're gonna pre-shape them, let them rest for 20 minutes, and then do the final shaping. And that will ensure that your balls are always perfectly round and smooth. This dough can be a little bit sticky at times, so for the final shaping, I'm going to use just a little bit of dusting flour. Don't go too crazy, as you can always add more. The final shaping step is pretty similar to the pre-shaping. Pick up a dough ball, place it smooth side down on the table, flatten it out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, pick it up, pinch the seam together. That's your burger bun done. Maybe you've got 4 more to practice on. Now place your dough balls on the tray with some non-stick paper. Make sure to leave plenty of space between them, because as they ferment and bake in the oven, they will rise massively. And now we can cover them up and leave them for the final proof, and this will take a while. Depending on the temperature of your kitchen, it may take up to 4 hours. Of course you could place the buns in a warm area, but remember, if it's too warm, the butter will start leaking from the buns, and you don't want that. Now during the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven 160 degrees Celsius with a fan on. And look at that, they have risen massively. That's what you want to see. If your buns don't look like this, leave them for longer. So there's just a couple of things we need to do before they go in the oven. We need to glaze them with the egg yolk and milk glaze, and sprinkle them with sesame seeds. Brush them nice and gently. You don't want to deflate them. And you can give them 2 coats. Now follow the glaze with the seeds. You can use different seeds if you want, or don't use any seeds at all. That's totally up to you, but I like a bit of sesame seed on my burger bun. After sprinkling, what I like to do is press the seeds lightly in with the palm of my hand. This will really make them stick. Now let's get these babies in the oven. They'll take around 25 minutes. You can turn the tray around halfway through the bake to get a nice even crust. But look at these buns, they're huge. They are so light and airy, it's unbelievable. And that's how you make brioche burger buns. As you can see, it's very easy. But of course, we're not finished yet, we need to make the filling. So for now, we'll just leave these on a rack to cool down completely, while we take care of the rest of the stuff. So in a bowl, combine the flour, the cornstarch and a little bit of salt. Give it all a good mix so that all the ingredients are distributed evenly. This will be the crispy coating for our chicken. And if you were making sudden fried chicken, you just add a bunch of spices to this. It's as simple as that. Now grab your chicken thighs and one by one, lay them down and coat them in the flour mix, on both sides. Because the buttermilk on the chicken will absorb quite a lot of the flour, what we're going to do is coat them once, place them down on a tray on the side, and then coat them all again. This will ensure that we'll get a nice thick and crispy coating. Because by the time you finish coating the last chicken thigh, the first one will be already wet. So we'll coat them again, so they're all nice and dry. And it's as simple as that. Now we can take these over to the stove and start frying them. Preheat your oil to around 180 degrees Celsius. You don't want it to be much hotter than this. And make sure to not overcrowd the pan. I'm going to do 2 chicken thighs at a time. As you place the chicken thighs in the oil, the thighs themselves bring the oil temperature down. So adding too many at a time will cool down the oil. And a cool oil means longer cooking time. And of course the chicken won't be as crispy. They should take around 7 minutes, depending on the size of your thighs. To be 100% sure, you can measure the temperature of the chicken. The thickest part should read over 75 degrees Celsius, which is 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is coat the chicken with the sauce. I'm going to use a brush. You could pour the sauce on, but I think this is better. I left the sauce out at room temperature for a few hours, because you don't want to use stone cold sauce from the fridge on your warm chicken, right? So there's just a couple things left to do, the slaw and toasting the buns. In a bowl, combine the cabbage and the spring onions. I'm going to keep a few for garnish. Then add the shredded ginger and finish everything with the dressing. Then just mix it all together. And again, if you're not into Asian flavors so much, the sesame oil, the fresh ginger, things like that, put something else in your burger. This would go equally as well with just a couple slices of tomato. and maybe a bit of red onion. But if you want the full experience, you're gonna want to make this. Now give it a taste, check for seasoning. Let's continue on with the next step. A soft bun like this really needs to be toasted. Toasting will give it an extra flavor, but more importantly, it will solidify the inside, preventing it from getting soggy. And a toasted bun will be more sturdy. It'll give you a more even bite. Simply slice your buns in half, brush them with a little bit of butter, and pop them in a hot pan. Rotate them around a couple times, press them into the pan, and once they look nice and golden, they're ready. And it doesn't take more than 30 seconds, it's well worth taking this step. And here we are, now we can assemble our burger. All of these things on the table are delicious all on their own, but when you combine them, they will make the ultimate burger. I even went as far as getting Japanese mayonnaise. It costs about 4 times as much as regular mayo, but boy is it good. So what do you think of this burger? Have you tried making Korean fried chicken before? And what's your favorite burger? I know I wouldn't be able to choose, because I love it all. But do let me know down in the comments. And if you have any questions or suggestions, also let me know. And don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because if you love bread and baking, you've come to the right place. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.